about it, now what I will ask you. Did you ever have this burning feeling inside you? This thing that was slowly claiming you, consuming you, playing with your mind? Like a fear or longing or maybe hidden desire? Was it waking you at nights? Was it pouring tears down your cheeks in the middle of the street when no one would notice? This thing occupying you. Did you ever have the urge to scream it out loud? So loud that you would finally hear the sound of it? And did you ever try to open your mouth to scream, but with both disappointment and relief maybe discovered that your words came out silent? I started writing because I was lost. I was lost in my head, too many ideas and concepts that I needed to write down and name. And then I got even more lost in a world outside of my head. There were days when I was shaking with stress, when I didn't know what to do, and when I had absolutely no idea what was happening in my head. Writing became a means for me to understand, to see myself. Recently, I'm often wondering, why do I even write? Is there anything that I could actually say that wasn't said before, or wasn't said better by someone wiser, older? Honestly, I don't know, but I keep on writing, because I have this thing in me that haunts me, wakes me at nights, that enfolds my days with fog of my imagination and delusion until I spill what there is to spill on the paper. Thing that screams in me until I silence it with a pen, only then being able to recognize the words. It is quite a universal feeling, this need for expression, this desire to share, and if not to share, then to shape, give size, name, meaning to all of those things inside of us, to all of those thoughts and feelings gathering at the bottom of our conscious minds, making fun of us in our attempts to grasp them. Expression is a difficult thing the way it is. And words here, we can say, are multifunctional. We use them on a daily basis. We tell our family what we want for dinner, we tell our friends what movies we like, and we tell our date that their lipstick is really nice. And that's how we all use them. We don't all paint or play violin or create movies or dance, but we all use words in different ways, in different languages, but we all do. That's why I believe it quite easily becomes an obvious thing to us, something that we take for granted, that it is easy to share ideas with thoughts. Because if we can very easily, directly and precisely say that we want a fried chicken for dinner, then perhaps we can as easily and as directly say that what we are afraid of or describe our fears and doubts and theories. But it's often not so simple. But what does it actually change to write something down? What does it matter if we do or how we do? I want to show you how writing things down changes everything. Firstly, it changes the reader. It changes the way the reader sees the world. It can even change the course of history, make people fight and die and believe in things and lose because of an idea. Books, there were many books that changed greatly the history of our world, that named and described things seemingly impossible to name or describe, like oppression. Let's here, for instance, take Feminine Mystique. That was one of the books to describe women's oppression in the United States in the 60s. It is quite a nice example here because this particular type of oppression is really peculiar. It was so normalized and so integrated into our culture that it was kind of invisible, seemingly impossible to pinpoint and name, appearing somewhere on the verge of women's conscious minds who knew that they were unhappy, unfulfilled maybe, but they didn't know why. And all the attempts to understand it were met with strong oppression from the society that made them believe that they were in fact hysterical, not serious, ridiculous maybe, until Betty Friedan wrote it all down and built a testimony to what thousands had in mind. This image of oppression formed a part of second wave of feminism and rested in the idea of so many generations for upcoming years. You see, writing creates realities even outside of the fantasy world. Was this particular image right or objective? Well, I don't know. Some say that it wasn't. That it, for instance, omitted a lot of important details about discrimination, excluded many important groups like Black women or gay women or working class women, women who weren't helped into carriages or who had to work twice as hard as men. Women whose biggest problems hardly was that they couldn't get a PhD or build a career. The ways writing can influence the reader, the culture, the society are multiple. It gives shape to ideas. It dictates truths, creates images, builds what we had in our heads. Did you ever have this sensation that you read something and you thought to yourself, yes, this is exactly about me, or this is exactly what I had in mind, only now informed into this coherent shape that I can understand? I had it so many times. It is important to note here that each time you decide that certain words do describe your own world, you give them the power to change it. You give them the power to shape your thoughts for you. And because there are so many ways in which the same sensation and feeling can be described using words, it is such a powerful tool to influence others. Secondly, writing changes the person who writes. Writing allows us to see our thoughts, to see ourselves, and to imagine what we are like. For instance, there were many days when I was freaking out about something, so afraid about something, when I was sure that the world was going to end. I would sit down and write. I would scribble down my thoughts and feelings, my fears and doubts, and the paper would take it, with all its rough silence that allowed me to hear myself. My characters would feel similar to me, or sometimes the opposite. My petty philosophical ideas would be preserved for a little longer. And thanks to that, I would have this calming feeling of release. Like I said what I needed to say, but without have to worry that I said too much. And here you see, I was starting to read my things. And finally, I could understand what I had in mind, what words were to shape my thoughts. And that would change my idea of who I was. And through that, it would change me. But why writing, you can think? Why is it so special about it? Except giving shape to ideas, it also allows us to get out of our heads. It allows us to write something down without the need to constantly form this coherent thought in your own head and gain a perspective to what we have in mind. And through this perspective to see it differently and understand it differently, and finally being able to realize what it was about or analyze it. Only this redirection of effort would make our thoughts appear more understandable. Writing also preserves ideas, valuable ones to less valuable ones, our feelings. And through this preservation, permanent, it forces us to take responsibility for what we write. The things we easily think in our heads, like for instance, all of those cruel things we think, we are much less likely to share with the paper because it makes us responsible for what we write. It also preserves ideas and concepts that we would easily forget and disregard. Yet, thanks to writing them down, we can see them staring at us expectantly, urging us to do something about it, or at least remember them. Writing changes everything, like it was changing the state of matter, from the gaseous state of our thoughts, scattered randomly around our heads, through the fluid state of spoken words. A little bit more physical, but still not really permanent. And finally, to rest in the solid state of our written words. That would define us as writers and readers. Words have this magical way to shape one's destiny. But in this society, we often disregard them or don't understand them. We perceive words as numbers, as elements of a finished work that needs to be named, classified, recognized, and steered in the right way to produce proper phrases and proper texts. We often see words as elements of a perfect recipe in our norms and in our rules that we can very easily form to create proper creations of language. I use the word proper here, and I enjoy immensely how perfectly it represents the kind of work I aim to describe. Proper. Not good, not bad. Proper. No complicated sentences, no mistakes, no going away from the topic, not too many repetitions, proper. And by proper, I also mean not challenging, not disturbing, not fresh, not new, not personal, not meaningful. Proper. Proper gets good grades in elementary schools because it's easily classified and assessed, because it doesn't make you question anything. It's nice to read. And all our lives, we are taught to write properly. We are expected to write properly, and very often we need to write properly. We certainly need to know how to write properly. The problem arises when we need to abandon proper in order to create something, to share something, to express something, to give meaning. Then we sit down with our pens, and instead of thinking about all of the meanings we see in words and the way that make us feel, we read dictionaries and we give standard definitions. We ask ourselves, why can't I just sit down and write something proper? Why can't I just sit down and write something that is nice and pleasant to read? Not strange, not weird, not crazy or delusional. Just proper. And we often ask ourselves, what am I talking about? Why am I making people feel uncomfortable? Why am I making myself feel so uncomfortable? I ask myself that questions very often, but I still do. And I know the answer. Because even though I have those rules of writing integrated into me like everyone else, even though I have this voice of thousands of rules that tell me what's proper and what's not, that my thoughts and feelings and my words aren't proper the way they are, I have this other voice that makes me write. And sure, it's improper. My writing is improper, my body is improper, my thoughts are improper, and my feelings are so very improper. But keeping them in my head drives me crazy. I want to feel at home in my own head and on my own paper. That's why I don't believe in proper way of thinking, way of feeling, way of expressing, in proper way of writing. That's why I write. And you see, I write because I want to scream and because I want to bleed on my paper. And if it's not proper, then maybe just maybe, there still isn't anything wrong with me. Maybe there's something wrong with the proper. So you see, even if it seems difficult, distant, even dull sometimes maybe, if you have this thing screaming inside you, this thing that wakes you at nights, write for yourself. Make your thoughts and feelings a little bit more permanent, a little bit more meaningful, a little bit more appreciated. Even if, or maybe especially if, they are improper. Thank you.